Hello and welcome to the EMJ Gold Podcast, brought to you by EMJ, your #1 open access destination for HCPs and pharma globally. I'm your host, Isabel O'Brien, back once again with my co-host Jade. How are you doing today, Jade?
I'm very well, thank you. We're coming to the end of the season now. A few more episodes left. It's gone by so quickly.
It absolutely has. I think the whole year's been going by quite quickly. I don't know if anyone else feels like this.
It is crazy, isn't it? But yes, end of the season. We've got another special episode coming up for you today, as well as a few more in the pipeline. Now, if you did tune in a couple of weeks ago, you'll have heard about mine and Jonathan Sackier's stint in Barcelona at Reuters Events Pharma this year.
Should we just remind them who Jonathan Sackier is?
Absolutely, of course. He is the host of the EMJ Podcast over here for healthcare professionals. While we were at Barcelona, we managed to snag some time in with a very interesting guest, and that is Harmony Garges, the Chief Medical Officer at ViiV Healthcare.
Yes, that's right. You may have seen the Catalyst interview that we published with her earlier this year. And today we're going to be giving you the exclusive extended audio and video version, if you're on YouTube, of the interview.
Mm-hmm. So let's learn a little bit more about Harmony herself. She's the CMO at ViiV, like we said, and here she leads ViiV's global medical team, and there she's ensuring the human safety and medical governance, as well as overseeing their overall global medical affairs strategy, so quite a lot on her plate.
Absolutely. But before joining the industry, she was actually a physician with expertise in paediatric infectious diseases, spending nearly 20 years caring for children with HIV, positioning her not perfectly for her role at ViiV today.
Absolutely. I think it's really good when pharmaceutical professionals have that background in healthcare as well, because they can really see both sides of the fence.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Together, Harmony and Dr Jonathan, who is also a doctor, got into her decision to leave clinical practice in favour of the pharmaceutical industry, the ethical considerations that people should keep in mind when they are treating children with HIV, how she thinks access to HIV treatment could be improved, and much, much more. But I think that's enough from us. How about we listen in?
Let's do it.
So, Harmony, welcome. How's everything going for you so far at the conference?
Hi, John. It's been amazing. It's always a really interesting conference to hear about what's happening in the industry and to network with people as well.
And you said that you've been involved in judging the competition, obviously not letting any cats out of the bag, but how was that as an exercise?
I had the privilege of being a judge for some of the EU Pharma Awards. And it was a real privilege. It was hard because there were so many fantastic entries looking at what people across the industry are doing in terms of engaging with patients and really focusing on patient centricity. So it was a real privilege, but it was hard because we had so many fantastic entries this year.
So obviously it's competitive businesses, but to share best practices in that manner, does that lead to people saying, that's a damn good idea, we really ought to do something like that?
It absolutely does, and we even try to do this within our company in terms of learning from each other, sharing best practices across regions, etc. But when you do it across the industry, it's so much more powerful, right? Because we have a big mission in front of us in terms of delivering new medicines for patients. And no one can do that alone. We all have to work in partnership. Absolutely. So we need to learn from each other and adapt and make sure we're doing the right thing for patients.
Well, let's take it back to the beginning. You trained as a physician. You trained in the Carolinas.
I did.
Right, know it well. Tell us a little bit about that journey, being involved in paediatric infectious diseases, and then flipping over and going into the pharmaceutical world.
Absolutely.
What inspired that?
Yeah, so I'm a pediatric infectious disease physician, as you said, and pediatrics is definitely my passion. And I realized when I was at Duke, I was always interested in research, and Duke was a clinical site for many of the pediatric HIV trials that were happening. And while I love taking care of children and I love building those relationships with them and their families, and for us in infectious disease, we often had long-term relationships because these were children with chronic diseases. We could really watch them grow up. I wanted to have a bigger impact, and that's really where I saw industry could play a big role. So by being a clinical trial site, got very interested in drug development and thinking, this is great, but if I could actually work for the company that is really creating these trials and creating these new medicines, I felt like I could have impact at scale, and that was really the driver to pull me into industry.
You're effectively practicing medicine, you're just doing it slightly differently to a much broader audience. And
That's right.
similarly, things like this, an opportunity to communicate is a way to get a message out and impact a lot of patients. So using this forum, using this bully pulpit, what would you want people to know about the treatment of the children that you care for through your company with HIV?
I think there's a couple things. One, remembering that children are not small adults, right? Pediatric medicine is a specialty area, so we do need people who understand it and can do specialized trials, because children are often left behind in research. And when we don't do the research in children, it leaves physicians having to figure things out on their own, patient by patient. So we need to invest in pediatric research, and that's a top priority. And I think the other piece we all need to remember, whether it's working with children or working with adults, is we are here to serve patients. And so we need to stay connected to patients. We need to understand what they want in their therapies. One of the things we've learned is physicians don't always know what patients want. And so you just have to have the right conversations with them, ask them, engage with them, and deeply understand what they want in their therapies as well.
And the challenge of having that conversation, obviously you've referenced the challenges of doing research in children. It's expensive, there are regulatory barriers to that, so you've got that to address. And then you've got to address the fact that you know, there's the whole consent issue. And then when you're actually deploying a therapeutic to a child, it's a conversation not just with one patient, but a whole, the environment, the family.
That's correct.
How do you, first of all as a clinician and now as a clinician working within the industry, how do you navigate that? Because as a surgeon, I know I face that and it's a challenge.
It can be a challenge. You navigate it with care, obviously, and even among pediatrics, you have to remember you're working with children, infants who are newborn, all the way up to adolescents and young adults, right? Yeah. So one size doesn't fit all, even within the pediatric space. And how you address consent and assent will differ over time. So when a child is quite young, it's very much a conversation with the parent. And then as the child starts to get older, the parents are still accountable for the consent piece, but you want to bring the child on that journey. You want them to understand what is going to happen. And we do seek child assent, so at least making sure the child understands and is agreeable.
Expand a little bit on what you mean by that, for those of us who are not familiar.
So again, it depends on the child at the right age, but somewhere around 8 years old, you want to still be engaging the child in the conversation, right? So explaining to them, let's say it's part of a clinical trial. You have to go through formal consent with the parents, but then you want to have a conversation with the child and talk to them about the disease, what the clinical trial is hoping to achieve. Let them know that this medicine hasn't been proven, but we think there's an opportunity for it to improve their condition. And then let them know, there could be side effects, so make sure that if they're feeling differently, they tell their parents. And really importantly, to make them know that they're not forced to continue. If they really are having a side effect or they don't like the additional procedures that they have to do as part of the trial, they don't have to continue. So it's really just starting to empower the child to be part of their care and to be part of that.
Yeah. Again, I think the issue of including children in clinical trials, we've had the same issue with women being included, and people of different races and ethnicities gaining access to clinical trials. You can't make the assumption children aren't small adults.
That's right.
Women are not the same as men, and so on and so forth. It's a dialogue that we need to be having more of, right?
We absolutely do, and we take that very seriously at our company. I think the industry as a whole is evolving to understand that, the people we serve are quite diverse. And you really need to understand how a medicine is going to perform in a wide patient population. And that population should be representative of the disease under study. So in our case, since I work on HIV, HIV affects all genders, all races, all ages. And we really make a concerted effort to make sure our clinical trials are representative of all of those populations. Because ultimately that's the information that physicians need. If you're treating a patient, you need to make sure that what you've learned from the clinical trial
is
has a
applicable.
likelihood to translate to the person sitting in front of you. So it's really important to be deliberate about that. We will put in certain targets in our clinical trials to say we need a certain percentage of women, we need a certain percentage of ethnic minorities, we need a certain percentage, if it's around sexual orientation, those kind of things, to make sure we're really representing the population that we serve.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're here in beautiful downtown Barcelona, as they used to say on Brown and Martin's Laughing years ago. And you're going to deliver a panel on securing faster, more equitable, broader global access to care.
Yes.
Massive topic. 3 top recommendations.
It's a really important topic, but it is so important for our industry to think about. So if I break this down simply, as an industry, we are here to deliver medicines that patients want, that physicians understand the value of, and that payers will pay for, right? Those 3 things have to happen. And when you think about global access, you have to do that for the world, right? So again, using HIV as an example, since that's the world I operate in, there are over 39 million people living with HIV around the globe. The vast majority of those people are in sub-Saharan Africa. So if we were only focused on developing medicines that people in the US could afford, we would be leaving behind the majority of people living with HIV. So we look at this holistically, and we approach it in 3 ways. I think first saying, what's the unmet need? Where is the unmet need? Where does it sit around the world? Where is it in every individual country? And then we look at, what's the broader health ecosystem in those countries? Do they have the right policies in place? Is this a medicine that will get on guidelines? Certainly for most of Africa and most of the world, where HIV is a burden, the WHO guidelines are incredibly impactful, right? Something has to be endorsed by them for government agencies and those kind of things to provide it. So is this a medicine that we think WHO would be interested in? And if not, is there work that we need to do for them to understand the value that this is bringing? And then once you think you have a strong platform for getting your medicine accepted on guidelines and valued in that ecosystem, you have to work in partnership, right? That's probably the 3rd message. And we work really well with Medicine Patent Pool, generic companies, and other global stakeholders who are passionate about this to say, how can we therefore, partner with these other organizations to make this medicine available in a more cost-effective way so it can get to the people who really need to benefit from it.
Eloquently said. It's a massive topic, and I've got about 40 more massive topics I'd love to discuss, but I know that you're time constrained and have to head off and educate us more from the podium. So I hope it's a conversation we can continue the next time you're in the UK, Harmony.
It'd be my pleasure.
Lovely,
thank you so much for the conversation.
Well, it was great to hear from Harmony there. You were really lucky to get some time in with her. I know how busy she is. So many insights there to pick from. I think something I did really like, though, was around when she was speaking about equitable global access around the world to HIV treatments. As she mentioned, there's more than 39 million people, I think, living with HIV, with a large majority living in sub-Saharan Africa, of course. So making medications that are actually accessible in that region has to be a huge priority, and anything companies can do to improve their process in those countries needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree completely there. For me, I think I really enjoyed her argument for staying more connected to patients. The industry can't completely know what they want unless they do directly partner with patients and speak to them. Because she is right, physicians won't always know these things. I know I don't know everything about the pharmaceutical industry as well, and it's learning every day. It's the same in any walk of life, really. You don't know what people really want unless you do go directly and ask them. I think this is a huge case for more patient forums and co-creation within the industry.
We love co-creation. Well, hopefully we are going to see lots more of both of those things in the future in HIV care, but also more broadly than that. However, that does bring me to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much to Harmony for joining us on the show and speaking to Jonathan there. Big thanks to him too. And be sure to tune in next week when we will be back for our penultimate episode of the season.
Already.
Until then, it's bye from us.
Bye.